So welcome to our December Broadband Advisory Council meeting. Thank you all for coming, and especially thank you to those who had to make the drive to get here. Good thing we have good weather today, I guess. Hi, Shirley. So I wanted to go ahead and get started with a little preview of our website. So you're all familiar with our current website. There are a few things we don't like about it. We don't like that this is the only update right here in the bottom section with the news and updates. We're constantly putting out content. We're doing a lot of blog posts. We're, on Twitter. We're sharing presentations on SlideShare. And this is really the only thing that changes, and you wouldn't notice it unless you're familiar with reading it every time you go there. So we've been working with Utah Interactive to roll out a new site. So here is our prototype. We kind of put things into pods, and things will be updated more frequently. In that project news box right there, every time you go to the website, that will be updated with the most recent blog post that we have published. The map will be easier to find. We're also redoing the interactive map with some added features, and Bert can sort of touch on that. And yeah, so here's our new website, and we'll probably be having an event when we're ready to roll it out. It's still in testing phase, so we'll keep you all updated as we move forward with that. So real quickly, let's just go around the room, do really quick introductions. I see a few new faces here, which will help us take roll offline after the meeting. So my name is Tara Tui, manager of the Utah Broadband Project here in Go-Ed.
I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm the coordinator.
I could hear you guys talking around.
First Rainbird, I'm the mapping lead for the Broadband Project.
Great, thank you. So we have a brief agenda today, so we'll move through everything, and we're hoping to be wrapped up by 11:30 today. But just be prepared for next month, because we already have a full agenda. Oh, should we check people in on the phone there?
Sure.
Tara, can you hear me? This is Jeff with Strata Network.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Jeff.
Bruce, Todd, Dave Ryan, and Tyler Rasmussen are with me. We just couldn't make it in, so appreciate it. We're linked on.
Okay, great. Thanks for calling in. Anybody else on the phone? Okay, great. We'll go ahead and get started then. Bert is going to present the November and December map of the months.
So we sort of kicked off a tradition, I think back in June, of doing one, or no, it was before that, wasn't it? April maybe? Yeah, in April, since April of 2012, we've been doing one sort of thematic map each month that takes some of the broadband data that we receive from providers, some of the data we've collected in field testing, or some issue related to broadband, and tries to kind of paint the picture of the landscape broadband availability in the state. And in July, we did a map showing the drive test speeds for each of the national parks, and kind of keeping in theme with that, and because it's a different season, in November, we did a real sort of light map where we looked at wireless availability at the Utah ski resorts. And we did this by looking at data that was reported by the providers and also reported on their websites in conjunction with the drive test speeds that we did last summer. And admittedly, drive tests in the summer probably give you a different angle on performance than what you have in the winter when you've got thousands of people at the ski areas. But basically what we've got here, along the Wasatch Front ski areas, you've got presence from all 5 of the major broadband providers. They've got technology in place. They're able to provide broadband services in the southern ski areas, Eagle Point outside of Beaver, Bryan Head in Iron County. You've got just a couple of providers, Verizon and AT&T there, and then Beaver Mountain up at the top of Logan Canyon. None of the providers were reporting broadband service there, and we didn't find it in our drive test either. So I think it's important to note that this designates the capability, and when you throw in thousands of skiers on the mountain, this doesn't necessarily mean the capacity, and I think that there are some issues at some of the ski areas with accommodating everybody during peak hours. So that's the November map of the month, again, a little bit on the lighter side. The December map of the month is a map of the Utah Education Network. And this is a very detailed data set that shows all of the nodes of the UEN network together with the schematic connectivity of the network and also the capacity along those connection paths in terms of speed. And this is a really detailed data set. It is almost impossible to do it justice on a one-page standard size PDF. We've got 813 sites mapped and the connection paths to all those sites. And also there are 120 BTOP sites that have been added or enhanced the network, and we've got data on exactly where those are. This was put together in partnership with UEN, and the idea going forward with this map is to enable it in an interactive mode so that you can zoom in to any area of interest. And along the Wasatch Front, the network is really dense. So being able to zoom the map in to look at exactly how schools and libraries are connected and interdependent will be really, really useful for UEN. And the thought is, let's take this data set and let's enable it in a tablet application so that their field technicians will have access to the schematics of the network when they're out in the field. So this is a start. Looking at this map, the red connections are the fastest, and the Wasatch Front is littered with high-speed UEN connections. And there are a few places where very small outposts are accessed via slower connections. Big Water jumps out on the map, and a couple of locations in San Juan doing pretty well compared to other rural areas in the country that have similar characteristics, but not as fast a speed as you're going to find in other parts of the state, especially the urban area. One other thing that I wanted to note is that in addition to updating the provider coverage and speed and technology data on our interactive map at broadband.utah.gov, we've also updated the August map of the month, which shows the highest known, at least known to us, capability within each community in the state. And this map is color-coded. Red is 1 gigabit or higher. The black, purple, and blue are the slower speeds that I think we need to be concerned about. And so each community gets a colored dot, and that represents their highest known capability at this point to the project. We've got some issues, again, San Juan County, some issues in Millard County, and a couple of kind of issues here and there in Box Elder County where they just don't stack up to the relative, I mean, I would say the amazing amount of capability that's in the rest of rural Utah. So that's what I've got for an update. Tara mentioned that we're updating the interactive map off the front page of the website. I think we'll have a presentation on that at the next meeting, but the goal is to just expand the capability a little bit in terms of the ability to filter by DSL, by cable, by fixed wireless, by wireless instead of the filter in just these broader wired or wireless categories. And we're going to ensure that it's working on tablets, across the full spectrum of tablets, and a couple other minor things, but we'll show that off next time.
Question.
Yes?
The situation you have down in San Juan, is that also a similar situation you have like out in Tooele County and Ivanpah area, or the Uinta Basin?
The speeds in the kind of northwestern Utah, Ivanpah, Grouse Creek, Park Valley, the capabilities there and in the Uinta Basin are higher than they are in the San Juan County areas. Yeah.
Yeah, just a point of clarification on the map. So I'm not sure how, what data set you used from UEN is in terms of developing the map, or how, what the time frame is. But on our core backbone, we do have speeds up to 10 gig. We are increasing that in certain areas of the state as well. The other significant development that's not shown on this particular map that we worked with Emory Telecom and Strata Networks was connection between Price, the USU campus, and Price over to Roosevelt, the ATC. So we now have a ring topology out with Emory and Strata, so that's another important development for any of the UEN connectors in that area of the state.
So 2 points I'm hearing is it would be good to have an additional classification shown on the map that shows the 10 gig and greater. Right now we've got it all lumped in 1 gig and greater. And then the second is that we need to work with Mike Downey to get the connection between Price and Roosevelt.
Yeah, and certainly there's a lot of plans in development that I think would show some improvements to the map that you've got. So.
Okay, we'll work on both of those. I think that you show this map to any other state, especially comparable to Utah, they'd be probably quite envious, but we'll try and make it even better.
Yeah, we've had several conversations with surrounding states that are looking to do similar things that UEN has accomplished, and so.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bert. So moving on to our next agenda item, we have a few items for discussion. I've asked Kevin Rose to give the group an update on FirstNet and efforts related to the National Public Safety Broadband Network, and Kevin's the lead for the state, advising on what's going on with that. So.
Thanks, Sarah. FirstNet had their second board meeting on Tuesday. No big announcements really came out of that meeting. However, it'd be good to note that they made it very clear during that meeting that they want to have a network put together within the next 18 to 24 months. What that's going to look like, we don't know. I didn't give too much detail about that, but that they recognize that they've got a large project ahead of them, and they want to push through it, and they want to get something done quick. They also established their Public Safety Advisory Committee, which is required under the law. This advisory committee is designed to give input to FirstNet as they design their network, and also to produce a statement of requirements to FirstNet. That committee is made up of about 40 plus members. However, it does have an executive committee, which is a 6-person committee. They have a representative from the Council of Mayors, the National Governors Association, and then a representative from each of the public safety disciplines. And just to note, Paul Patrick, the director of the Bureau of EMS here in the state of Utah, is serving on that executive committee for representing EMS. So that's put together, and they're working on their statements of requirements to get that sent up to FirstNet. FirstNet's also working on filling their position for the director. They've closed the submission timeline for applications. They got applications they're going through. They want to get somebody appointed, hopefully within the next month. Also, NTIA just created a division for public safety communications, which is going to be the division of NTIA that works with FirstNet, and also that division will be the division that oversees the planning grant. And that grant they're hoping to get released the first of the year, as soon as possible. Stephen Fletcher was appointed by NTIA to direct that new division in NTIA. So we're hoping to see some grant guidance released, hopefully January, February timeline, gives a better idea of what we'll be able to do. Their intentions is to have a 2-phased approach with the grant. The first phase would be to give a little bit of seed money to get the states going with a governance body, get that put together, and then after that, once FirstNet has a business plan in place and knows exactly what they're needing, they'll release the second phase of grant money to the states, which will be the bulk of it. That'll give us money to go through and actually start collecting data and doing outreach and education, et cetera, et cetera. Other than that, nothing real new has come out. Is there any questions at all about anything that's been going on or anything I can clarify? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So next up, I wanted to go over a report. You all were sent a link to this report in the agenda that was sent out, and I had a few slides I prepared just to give you a summary. So a few copies of the report are over on the table too if you're interested in taking one. Just to summarize, how many of you have heard of TechNet before? TechNet was formed a few years ago by a group of technology-related companies, and they address policy issues at the federal and state levels to support public policy related to innovation and technology. So they just released their state broadband index, and this gives us a rank of states according to a number of metrics surrounding each state's broadband access and adoption rates, things like that. So Utah ranked number 9 in this study. Washington was number 1, California was number 5, and that sort of rounds out the West, as you can see on this graphic here. An interesting note, there's no other Rocky Mountain states in this ranking, so Utah's kind of a standout when you're looking at anything West and Midwest. Obviously, you can see that on the map. The rankings were based on a number of factors, including adoption, which they used the NTIA rankings where Utah ranks number 1 out of all states in terms of broadband adoption. They also made these rankings based on network speeds. Akamai was one of the metrics that they used, and Utah placed very high in those rankings. Number 1 in the West, I think number 4 or 5 out of all states. They also used, in terms of network speeds, information from the Fiber to the Home Council. Utah placed well above average in terms of fiber to the home connections, and that also helped elevate our ranking. They also made this ranking based on each state's economic structure, and that metric was based on participation in the ICT industries, the tech and communications industries, and CTIA's apps industry rankings. Utah didn't do extremely well in either of those rankings, but were elevated by the first two that I mentioned. The ICT industries really tended to favor states with university towns and a high concentration of tech companies and universities. And so you can obviously see the Northeast, those rankings were very elevated due to that specific ranking. So they also mentioned in the report things that they saw that led to better broadband economies. Promising state approaches for improving broadband climates included executive and legislative leadership at the state level, state funding, states who have dedicated public funds to networks. They also noticed cooperation and partnerships as an important aspect to elevating those rankings, and state planning. So those are all things that Utah has done fairly well at. We can always do a better job at each one of those. A few case studies I wanted to go over just to summarize, for your information. Number 5, California, they formed a committee in 2008, and they reported out recommendations for the state to act on, and this created the California Advanced Services Fund. The purpose of that fund was to serve unserved and underserved areas, and the funding came through a small phone and VoIP services fee. It was also funded through the AT&T SBC merger in 2005. This is a separate initiative, excuse me. The California Public Utilities Commission created the California Emerging Technologies Fund, which the Advanced Services Group and Committee used to actually create some network build out. And that was funded through the merger, and it was $60 million over 5 years from AT&T. And the report cites that as a big reason why California placed high in the ranking today because of their prior legwork. The next case study was Maine. It ranks number 40. The reason for their low ranking was below average adoption, but in 2006 the legislature created the Connect Maine Authority, or the Connect Me Authority as it's called. This collects an annual service fee from all communication service providers and then provides grants to build out broadband to unserved areas. And Utah was also a case study, and our ranking was number 9. As I mentioned, because of our high adoption rate, high fiber to the home average. And the report cites our high ranking also because of publicly supported broadband networks. It also mentions UEN's successes and the anchor tenant model being extremely successful for broadband deployment in rural areas. It also mentions UDOT policies for conduit build-out starting with the 2002 Olympics and the Utah Telehealth Network as success stories. The next case study was Massachusetts at number 2. They cited their high concentration of high-tech and academic research institutions and their usage of partnerships for their very high ranking. And also, I joke with my colleague in Massachusetts that, rural Massachusetts is not rural. And they have a group that's specifically addressing rural issues. And, whenever we're on a phone call together, everybody makes fun of him for saying that anything in Massachusetts is rural. So take that into account as well. The next case study was Missouri at number 32. The state has realized that broadband access is a big issue for their state, and so they recently created the Rural High-Speed Internet Access Task Force. The state leadership has made commitments and a goal to get 95% of Missouri residents equipped with broadband by 2014, and they created the Mo Broadband Now task force, which has been charged with executing that. They also have 19 regional planning councils, which has been very successful in addressing broadband issues at the local level. And we're going to be talking about a regional planning initiative that we'd like to take on later in this meeting. So we've looked to Missouri for a lot of what they've been able to do in terms of regional planning. The last case study was Ohio, ranking number 39. They were a leader in early policy efforts. They created the Ohio Broadband Council, and the council expired in 2010 at the end of the governor's administration. And so with political changes, they've seen less of a focus on broadband adoption and deployment efforts at the state level, and that was one of the reasons why it had a lower ranking, and it seemed to be more of an underachiever based on their past successes. So I just wanted to give you, a quick summary on that report so you can see how we're stacking up to other states, and to keep other states' efforts in mind as we're trying to address planning issues on the state level. So, any thoughts, questions about the report? Okay, easy enough. Next up, let's see. Do you want to get us back to the agenda here? I put this agenda item on just sort of an open discussion item. If we have any upcoming legislative issues to monitor for the session, because our next meeting will be during the session, so we won't have a chance to talk before then. So, one issue I can think of that we should all be monitoring is potential reform of the Universal Services Fund in the PUT committee. I don't know if you've all seen the new committee appointments to the PUT committees in the House and the Senate. We have, in the House, out of 10 members, we have 5 freshman members. So I think, it would be useful for us, and I know we're going to be doing a lot of educational efforts. I would encourage you to get to know those committee members as well. We also have a lot of changeover in the Senate on the PUT committee there, and so I think education's got to be a big focus for us in this upcoming session. I don't really have any other items to bring up. Does anybody else have any issues that they're going to be monitoring or? Yeah. So with rev and tax, I did have a question. During the interim, Senator Bramble had brought up the idea of sort of telecom taxes and fees. Is that something that the committee sees taking up in the session? Oh. Okay. Well, if there's anything you need to fill us in on, just let me know. As long as it's not already doing it, so. Yeah. Eric, did you have a comment?
I was just going to make mention, talk about the Universal Service Fund. I don't think you're going to see parties involved, and I think you will see some recommendations go back.
back, it's 12-999-10, and they're right in the middle of the comment period right now. And they're collecting comments, and as we were just informed, the Division of Public Utilities will be sending a report.
I also saw that they put out a notice for the technical conference on January 10th, for those who are interested.
Final comments have already been filed, initial comments. The final comments are due the 21st of December.
Great. Any other legislative issues that we should discuss pre-session? So we'll be having our next meeting, it's, down here, it says February 21st, and we'll be having that in the Capitol Boardroom. So we'll be into the session. I encourage you to send issues for discussion before that meeting so that we can make good use of our time there. Okay. So next up on our agenda, we wanted to bring up to this group the idea of regional planning that we've had. Kelly put together a handout for everybody. She's been doing a lot of research on regional planning efforts in other states. So just to give you a little bit of a background on where this change is coming from. When we originally was awarded this grant, we planned to do a public awareness campaign throughout the state to increase broadband adoption. At the beginning of the project, we thought that a big issue for Utah was probably broadband adoption in rural areas. So we did a broadband demand survey with Utah State University and found that that is not the case. That adoption is pretty equal in urban and rural areas of the state. It wasn't even really identifiable by a certain demographic or population center. So we've sort of been looking at other options for what we could use that money for that we had previously allocated to this public awareness campaign. Something that has been really popular in other states is regional planning efforts. So obviously we have different issues on the Wasatch Front, and different issues in Uinta County and in 5 County and 6 County. So what we would like to do, and we've submitted this proposal to NTIA to reallocate our grant funding to address regional planning. So I'll let Kelly just maybe take a stab at going over a little bit of what she found from other states, and we'd like your thoughts and your feedback. And as we move forward with this plan, we hope that this group will be an integral part of planning for those regional councils.
Okay, so what I did was I've been looking through other states' state broadband initiative websites and looking at states particularly that are doing regional planning that have published like a toolkit or some kind of materials that show exactly what they're doing on the ground with their regional planning teams. And I think that what I found was pretty much what we would have expected the format and participants would be. So I've gone through and just done a summary of, there were 5 states that I was able to find a really good kind of toolkit. So that was Arkansas, Colorado, Missouri, Nebraska, and North Carolina. And so I went through and kind of categorized things that they've done. For example, the first item is who's participating in these groups. And it seems like across the board, the other states are doing groups that have sector-specific participants, similar to what we have here on this advisory council. You'd have somebody from public safety, you'd have somebody in economic development, healthcare, and I've listed out for Missouri, Nebraska, they gave a detailed list of their participants. And I think that kind of structure in Utah would work really well with the existing structure that we have in the advisory council, that these regional planning teams would have representatives from different sectors. And we definitely would like to have you as advisory council members help us with recommendations in different areas of the state. If there are specialists or local champions of broadband in your specific area that you feel should be involved when we get down to the local level. That kind of feedback would be really, really appreciated. And I think when you look at these lists, you can see that a lot of the sectors that they have are similar to what we have on our advisory council, but there are a few different things, like there's energy and tourism and things like that that we don't currently have on our advisory council. But depending on the area and if there's a need for it, we can definitely look into having representatives from different sectors. And then those people at some point could maybe come in and report to the advisory council about local issues that we need to be aware of. Another component that a lot of these plans have is a lot of them do kind of a community evaluation, and a few of the toolkits have lists of questions that you can ask about your community. They range from having an actual survey to just having kind of that group sit down and say, okay, let's look at our community. What kind of access do we have in the libraries? What kind of issues do we have? So you can kind of look at it from a couple of different ways, whether you go out, to general participants, or you just kind of stick with your group and evaluate what you know about your area. And so we have lists of questions that we can look at and forward on to those groups so that they can evaluate their community and see where the needs are. And then a few of the states kind of gave a general outline of their planning process, dealing with assessing the community, how to engage the community, and ultimately what we would like to see is that we'd like for each of these regional planning groups to put together some kind of local technology plan that they can give us feedback about what's happening in their areas. They've also given a timeline, and I think that their timelines go anywhere from 12 months to 18 months, and I think that's probably, we're thinking about a year time frame, and they would probably meet about 6 times is what we're thinking currently. And then the other thing that I thought was useful from the kits that I looked at was some of them actually gave sample materials, residential surveys, business surveys, even meeting outlines of things that they've discussed in different meetings. Some of them have picked a different topic for each meeting. And so I've kind of compiled materials from all of these different groups throughout the different states. They also have examples of communications materials that the different groups could maybe utilize. And so, we'll probably pull together some materials to help those groups get started and to give them some structure. So, yeah.
So to help us execute this regional planning effort, we've been in talks with the AOG organization, and so for those of you who are not familiar with the AOGs, the associations of government cover all parts of the state. There are 7 different areas, and each have an AOG office that represents the counties within each of those 7 areas. We have asked NTIA, and we don't have a final approval on this, but just so you're aware, we've asked to be able to give grants of 7 grants at an average of $20,000 each, and that would be granted to the AOG, who would be the local group that would be responsible for actually holding the meetings and coordinating the planning efforts and everything like that. We've also asked for authorization to hire a consultant who's well-versed in local planning efforts that would assist us in reaching out to the AOGs, being on the ground, being their contact. They're sort of always on contact for questions, for meeting deadlines, and they would be responsible for compiling the 7 regional plans and presenting this group with sort of a final product. We also asked for authorization to hold a state broadband summit where we would invite all of those council members and the general public and this group, obviously, to have a day of discussions, downloads about different regional issues, so everybody can see what everybody else is doing. And I think conferences like that would be extremely helpful to people, especially at the local level. So we would really like this group to become involved, at the local level to whatever extent is possible. That you have colleagues at the local level. Donna's shaking her head yes, and that's great.
And providers, that's one thing I forgot
Yes.
to mention, is we definitely want providers from the different regions in a room to see what's going on in the areas and to form those connections. I think it's really beneficial.
Definitely. So that's sort of our initial thoughts. I thought I'd ask the group today if you have any thoughts that you think might be helpful to us in the initial planning efforts.
You're going to remember why you don't invite me to your meetings, but I think one of the things that we do a really poor job of as a state is we have lots of government programs that we administer in our office, and as that message gets out to regional areas, it gets really confused, right? So one of the things that we're working on is doing some type of education using the same system you're using today to go out and get that message out. What we're finding is that one of the more difficult problems we have is they haven't put, and not they, but some counties and some areas have done a phenomenal job with economic development planning, where they can tell you exactly what their county resources are, where they want to be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and even tell you by program how that marries up with either the governor's or the legislature's vision or the state's vision as a whole. And to those counties that have done the work, I think they're seeing benefit from that. We also have on the other end of the scale counties that haven't done that degree of work. And I think when you talk about, your meeting outlines and your surveys, I think broadband is a subset of that overall initiative that has to take place. And I don't know whether that leads out from your group or from our group, but I think we have to make sure we're not getting the cart before the horse, because for us to go out and ask for broadband plans from some of those counties, they could tell you in an hour and they'd have the meeting, it would be phenomenal, it would be really helpful, and I think we'd find a lot of use from it. From some of the other counties, it's going to be tough for them to lay out a broadband plan when they haven't laid out an economic development plan. And I don't mean it by county specific, sometimes it's area, sometimes it's city, but we really need to do a better job from our office's standpoint in supporting that overall vision of getting an economic development plan, and with our partners from EDCU, because I think they play a role in that as well, of having them lay out first their economic development plan so then we can lay the broadband over it to see how we can help them with it. And I know Eric's done a little bit of preliminary work. We're hoping to do that thing in January. And I just put that out there as a data point that if we were to start your initiative, it would probably need to be after February or March when those conversations have taken place. Does that work with your timeline, or is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And that'll serve as an impetus for us to kind of get our tail in gear to get our work done ahead of you. So it'd be a great pressure point for us to keep us motivated.
Yeah. Do you want to push your mic on right in front of you? Just the bottom little button.
I just was wondering, as I look at this and look at the plans that have been adopted or in place at Arkansas, Missouri, and I know in those states there are tribal nations. And in Utah, I think that would be good to indicate that there is going to be outreach to the tribal nations, because I don't think the state nor the counties or the do a very good job of outreaching to that community, even though they may be located in the area. And to provide that access and resource is really critical.
I did write down, as Kelly was talking about this, I wrote down tribes.
Yeah. And I just wrote what they had put in their plan for you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, Donna. Do you want to pass that down, Stan? Thanks.
Thank you. The thing I might say is the timeline that was just alluded to would work very well, because that would give us an opportunity to work with all the different constituencies and get them aware that this is going to happen. Maybe if there was an initial press release of what's going to come that any of us could share with either providers or people who are using the services, I think that would help us get this started and get some awareness.
Any other thoughts? Well, I guess that means that we put together a really good plan in summary, and we'll definitely be reporting back to you. I think that it would be worthy of sort of an interim email between the meetings if we do get approval, and we'd like to share the plans with you all so you're aware of what's happening, and make sure that our timelines all sync up, go ahead and everything that's happening and would give you guys enough time to sort of reach out to your colleagues at the local level. Yeah, Chris?
Does it help you all, I know we're not a voting body, but does it help you to get a vote of support on behalf of the committee? Does that assist you?
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to vote to support what you're doing in terms of outreach.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Tell me why. Okay. Somebody else will have to take the votes from now on. Okay. Okay, well, I mean, I really appreciate the feedback we've got today. I think that will be extremely useful. And if you think of things offline or you would like to share names of people you would like us to get involved, it's included on the bottom of that handout, but you can email Kelly or I with thoughts or comments or suggestions for people or different, you know, if you think one area of the state needs more of a focus on this rather than that, you know, that would also be helpful for us when we're talking with the AOGs and working on initial recruitment for those councils. Okay, so, wow, I think we have a record time, 1 hour. I think we're ready to wrap up unless there are any other items anybody would like to bring up. You know, I think maybe we should actually mention some upcoming events. So everybody has them on their calendar. We have the next council meeting, which will be at the Capitol Boardroom, February 21st. The March meeting, you know, now you know we're meeting every other month, but we wanted to have a March meeting that will coincide with the URTA annual conference, and it's nice to have the meeting in St. George so we kind of get different participants there. Stan, did you want to mention the conference?
Well, currently it's scheduled for March 15th. However, we recently discussed with the legislative session. Legislative session goes to the 14th. We were looking at moving it back 1 week so that we're clear that.
So this is maybe the week after.
It could be the week after, but we'll let you know.
Okay. Any other upcoming events people would like to mention?
I have a list of what we have on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so actually tomorrow, Tara and I will be down in Cedar City speaking with the Southern Utah Technology Council. And then the Governor's Energy Development Summit, I don't know if any of you have interests in that area, is being held on January 10th and 11th, and that's at the Salt Palace Convention Center. And then on January 28th, AGRC is doing the Maps on the Hill. I don't know if you want to say anything about it.
Yes. Thanks. It's something that we did last year. For the first time, we reserved the Capitol Rotunda and invited state, county, local government, private sector, mapping folks to come show the projects that they've been working on that would be of interest to decision makers in the public. So we put up a bunch of eagles in the rotunda and have folks stand ready to explain a little bit more about the maps that they're showing and the projects behind them. So that's on the 28th, which is the first day of the legislature. And last year we had about 40 participants, I think. I wasn't there, I was out of town, so I missed it, but looking forward to this year's.
We will have broadband.
Yeah, we'll have thank you, Jesse. We'll have several maps to highlight what the project has been working on.
If there's any legislators we should target to ask if we want their maps, we should let them know.
And another piece is if you have your organization or business has a map that you'd like to enter into the Maps on the Hill display, we can get you that information.
It's pretty open.
And then the only other thing, other than the URTA that we're waiting on the dates for, is our Rural Development Office is doing their Rural Legislative Day on March 8th from 9 to 3. So anybody that has a rural focus might want to And that, all of that information is on our website on the events page, and we update that pretty frequently, so.
If there aren't any other events, I think we'll call this meeting adjourned, and thanks again for coming. Happy holidays. Please take some treats.
That's right.
See the crackers to go.
It's March 8th, from 3 to, from 9 to 3.
Has it been a building?
It's at the Capitol. It's like their day at the Capitol.
Okay, so March 8th.
Yeah, so they have it reserved. They do one every year. And we did a booth last year, and it had like the rural legislators on the
And the January 28th in the Rotunda with all
Yes,
these,
that's.
do you know Comcast did anything?
I don't think they did last year. When I was there, I didn't see that they had done anything last year. So. But I know like the rural legislative day, like the idea is to do these events when the legislature